At first glance, Sinister may look like another entry in the increasingly crowded bullet heaven genre, but once you start playing, it quickly becomes clear that it's trying to do something different. The constant countdown timer and the ability to stop time and the progression system that rewards smart decision making all help separate it from its competitors. But it does its fresh approach, make one of the better roguelike available today, or is it just another interesting idea that's hasn't quite reached its full potential? After spending any time with this game, here's what I think about this. The setting takes place in a grim future where humanity has already lost the war against the machines. Civilization has fallen and the few survivors have no chance of fighting back through conventional means. Instead, one final plan remains. You play as the Chrono Child, the last surviving human capable of manipulating time itself. Rather than fighting to survive in the ruined future, your mission is to travel back in time to different points in history and prevent the machine's uprisings before they even reach its devastating conclusion. Don't expect heavily cinematic experience though. The story mostly serves as a backdrop for the gameplay and gradually reveals more information, through short conversations and recovered memories between missions. As you progress, you rescue important characters to uncover what caused humanity's downfall and slowly piece things back together in the timeline leading to the apocalypse. It is not the kind of narrative that constantly pushes itself into the spotlight, but it does enough to keep the missions feeling meaningful. I found myself wanting to see once new information or character would appear after each successful run, even if the gameplay remains primarily the attraction. One of the first things that stood out to me was the game's presentation. Ascent Zero blends futuristic sci-fi with anime-inspired visuals to create a style that feels distinctive without trying too hard. Character artwork during the dialogue scenes looks sharp with expressive portraits that give the cast plenty of personality. But once the gameplay begins, the camera shifts into an isometric perspective just to keep the action readable even when the screen fills with enemies and projectiles. The environments lean heavily into the cyberpunk aesthetics that you'll move through the ruined cities, industrial facilities and metallic corridors and high-tech laboratories, all lit by neon lights and reinforce game's bleak vision of the future. This is where the visuals really shine, however it is during combat. Every attack is accompanied by colorful effect explosions that's satisfying with the visual feedback. But the true highlight is the time stop mechanic. The moment you activate it, the battlefield suddenly freezes, the colors become muted, enemies stop in their tracks, and dozens of incoming projectiles hang motionless in midair. It is a mechanic that never gets old because it does look like it's cool, but completely changes how you approach every encounter. Performance was equally solid throughout my time with the game, and on the Xbox Series X version, Ascent Zero maintains a smooth 60 frames per second while targeting 4K resolution, which is especially important considering just how chaotic the combat becomes later on in the game. The soundtrack also deserves some credit because the electronic tracks keep the momentum high during combat without becoming repetitive, while the weapon sounds and mechanical explosions and the time manipulation effects all carry enough impact to make the battlefield satisfying. But overall, the presentation isn't necessarily groundbreaking, but it's polished, stylish, and consistently enjoyable from beginning to end.
I'll make them pay.
This game is where it really separates itself from other survival-style roguelike games because most of the titles in this genre ask one simple question: how long can you survive? Ascent Zero asks something different because of how well you can manage your time. Instead of beginning each run with a large health pool or unlimited exploration, you're only given 30 seconds, because once that timer expires, the game ends immediately, regardless of how well you perform. And that creates a constant sense of urgency because every decision matters because you're always racing against the clock. Defeating elite enemies, taking down bosses, open treasure chests, and collecting time chests all reward you with additional seconds, forcing you to decide whether it's worth taking bigger risks for larger rewards. I really enjoy how this mechanic changes the pace of the game. Rather than wandering around farming weaker enemies, I constantly found myself looking for the fastest path towards objectives that will extend my survival. That pressure makes every successful run feel earned because you're balancing in aggressions, positioning, and resource management all at once. Combat itself combines automatic attacks with active abilities that give you more control than many games in this genre. The time stop ability becomes your greatest weapon because freezing enemies, projectiles creates valuable opportunities to escape dangerous situations, reposition for better attacks, grab experience crystals safely, or unleash powerful abilities before the action resumes. Combined with the stamina-based dash and multiple playable characters, the combat remains engaging throughout most of the experience. Every character brings something different, with their strengths, encouraging, experimentation instead of relying on a single strategy for the entire game. That variety becomes more rewarding as each run introduces randomized upgrades that can dramatically change how your build evolves. This game is not without its problems, and most of them become noticeable deeper as you get into the game. The biggest issue in my opinion is how the progression shifts towards gear grinding late in the game. Eventually, success starts depending on less how well you play more and whether you manage to acquire the equipment with strong randomized stats that takes emphasis away from the player's skill. It can make repeated runs feel more like farming than mastering the game's mechanics. Combat also feels with the rough edges while the overall action is fast and satisfying. Manual aiming does always feel responsive as like during the hectic battles. When dozens of enemies surround you and projectiles are flying across the screen, trying to line up your precision shots can also sometimes be more frustrating than rewarding. Another issue is the user interface because more of the mechanics and upgrade system become available. Menus start feeling cluttered, and more important information isn't always presented as clearly as it could be. During combat, the screen becomes overloaded with damage numbers, explosions, visual effects, enemy attacks, and more. And while it certainly looks impressive, it can occasionally make it difficult to read exactly what's happening in the middle of all the chaos. The opening hours can also be a little slow before you start unlocking several permanent upgrades. The game feels noticeably more restrictive, and once those systems begin opening up, the experience improves considerably, but newer players may, feel the patience being tested before everything starts clicking all together, because I've been doing my run, I felt it, how frustrating it can be. Even with the drawbacks, I generally enjoy my time with this game, and what impressed me the most is that it didn't reinvent the wheel, but during my time with the primary resources, instead of simply as another gameplay gimmick, it creates something constant tension with the moment each mission begins. You're always thinking about your next objective and the remaining seconds that you have left, rather than the next fight that is worth the risk. That simple idea transforms that can have been another familiar survival style game, but it feels far more engaging than I expected. The presentation is polished and the soundtrack keeps the energy high and the combat satisfying for the most part, and the progression system offers enough depth just to keep you invested across multiple sessions. While repetitive environments, inconsistent combat mechanics, and the late game grind prevent it from reaching its full potential, none of these issues are significant enough to overshadow the game when it does well. Consider that its affordable price and the fact that it's available through Xbox Game Pass, and that it also offers excellent value, especially if you're already a fan of this genre, or bullet haven games looking for something that its own identity. And then it becomes something new, the genre, but it's absolutely a game worth checking out. And for that, I give Ascend to Zero a 4 out of 5. If you enjoyed this review, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And also click that bell for notifications to be informed for up and coming content from the gamer section.